Now, of course, the ballot initiative in Kansas was just one of the many elections yesterday, as 5 states held their primary elections. Among those was the state of Michigan, which saw one of 47 Republican congressmen who voted in favor of codifying a redefinition of marriage lose to a conservative primary challenger. Joining me to discuss this and other headlines from last night's elections is Brent Keilen. He's the Vice President of FRC Action, and FRC Action is sponsoring this segment. Brent, good to see you today.
Thanks, Joseph. Good to be with you.
So you track these things closely. We just talked about a development in Kansas, but there was a lot of other things happening across the country yesterday. What did you take away?
You know, Joseph, there were a few key races that we were watching. I think that have national implications. I think it's important to remind ourselves as well. You know, a lot of us don't like primary season or election season, or it turns us off. But policies really are on the ballot, and that's what this is about. And elections continue to have consequences. And I think about it, you know, through that lens. A couple of the ones that really stuck out to me yesterday were a couple of key races for the United States Senate. It's split 50-50 right now. We've seen so many different policies over the past couple of years that are incredibly important. One of those races for the U.S. Senate was in Arizona, the primaries in Arizona, and it's a seat currently held by Democrat Mark Kelly. We now know who the Republican candidate will be. That'll be Blake Masters, who has a business background there. That's on everybody's short list as far as these races that will probably determine who gets Senate control in November. Another key U.S. Senate race was in Missouri, where we had Attorney General Eric Schmitt win. That was significant because depending on which candidate came out of that primary, there was some speculation maybe that would be a competitive seat this fall. Schmitt is deemed by most people to be a solid conservative, solid candidate. So most experts are saying that's probably a pretty safe seat for the GOP this fall there as well. Also, some key governor's races. We were watching Michigan, Arizona, and Kansas all had significant governor's primaries as well, and now heading into some very important general elections this fall.
And Brent, we noted at the lead into this segment that in Michigan, there was an interesting congressional race because one of the congressmen who voted against his party in general to codify the Obergefell decision and same-sex marriage into federal law actually lost his primary to a challenger from the right, a more conservative challenger. Do you think that issue played a role in that race?
Joseph, I do, and it was an extremely interesting race to watch. Our PAC, FRC Action PAC, actually endorsed John Gibbs, the challenger there, who is taking on Peter Meijer in Michigan's 3rd congressional district. This race was particularly interesting because Meijer was one of those 47 Republicans, like you say, to vote to undermine marriage and religious liberty. But the primaries yesterday were the first primaries after that vote, really. So he was one of the first Republicans to vote the wrong way on that, to also be held accountable at the ballot box. So people were wondering, how would this play out? And he lost, as you said. It was a close race, 52-48. But Meijer actually had way more money than his challenger as well. The last reports I saw had him outspending him 5-1, and he still lost. So issues like that, some other issues at play in that race were very significant, and just reminds us that people are watching what their members do in Congress, and they will hold them accountable at the ballot box.
Now, Brent, I know that he was one of 47 House Republicans, but all 47 will be on the ballot. Are any more of the 47 who voted for the codification of the Obergefell decision, are they still going to face primary challenges? And do you expect that to be an issue in other races?
I do think it's something that's important to keep watching in other races. The majority of them are past their primaries, but there are a couple other ones as well. One that comes to mind is Liz Cheney in Wyoming, who is being challenged by Harriet Hageman out there. That is sometime in August. I can't remember the exact date, but it will be interesting to see it impact primaries like that for sure.
Wyoming's primary is August 16th for those who are in Wyoming, and be sure to vote. But of course, Liz Cheney has a lot of other things going on in her election as well. So that will be a national story, whatever the outcome of that is. Brent, one of the other kind of narratives around these primary elections, specifically the Republican primary elections, is trying to understand how much influence President Donald Trump still has in the Republican Party. People are looking at Trump-endorsed candidates and not Trump-endorsed candidates to see how they're doing, how much influence he may still have. What were the results that way yesterday?
There were some results on both sides. I think the fact that he still has some influence in the party is undeniable. Probably case in point there is Arizona, where a lot of the Trump-backed candidates either won or are leading. We look at the U.S. Senate primary that I mentioned, also the governor primary, which was a very close race. At last I checked, that was too close to call. Had a few other races like that as well. So I think there definitely is still some influence there.
Now, Brent, perhaps the last question for you, but I'm going to ask you to get your crystal ball out, because what everybody really wants to know is what's going to happen in the House and the Senate come November. Do you have a prediction?
I think that the Republicans will take the House. That's my prediction. I think they have a very good shot at taking the U.S. Senate. I think that will be a lot tougher, a lot closer. Joseph, one of the interesting trend things to note in the primaries yesterday, we had 6 states that had these, is where was that enthusiasm? And if you look at where the enthusiasm was in 5 out of the 6 states compared to the last midterm 4 years ago, it decidedly favored the GOP. The one exception to that was the Kansas vote that you talked about earlier with your previous guest. That trend has been a pretty consistent trend, almost without exception, the entirety of the primary season so far. So that's one of the reasons I say that, but I think the signs for a red wave, there's still a lot of signs pointing to that. How big it is, we don't know. There's a lot of time between now and the election as well, so anything can happen, but I still think that the GOP is looking pretty good at this point.
There was some sense that the overturn of Roe versus Wade would turn out the left in droves, at least as of yesterday. That doesn't seem to have happened. Brent Keilen, thanks for your time.